Welcome everyone to this senior leadership session today at WT2. My name is Kavita Riali and I'm a Principal Tech Program Manager, Microsoft Cloud Team. I've been an integral part of WT2 in the past years as a speaker panelist and most recently as a committee volunteer. It is my honor today to host this session. We will have two sessions today in the next 1 hour. The first session is going to be 40 minutes and it is going to be a panel. And the topic is leading in times of change. As you know, you as leaders have seen some unprecedented times, and we have a fantastic and very talented, diverse team of 6 women leaders across the industry, sharing some great insights in the panel. I want to introduce Shikha Mittal, who is a senior director in VMware, and also she'll be hosting the panel, and I will pass it on to her in terms of introducing the panel. And one note to everyone in the audience, we will have an offline Q&A for this, and also we will encourage everyone to ask their questions in WOA app. So with that, over to you, Shikha, and take it away.
Thank you, Kavita. And hello, everybody. Welcome to this session. I'm Shikha Mittal. I'm Senior Director of Product Management at VMware. And today I'm joined by an amazing group of women in diverse roles, like Kavita mentioned, in diverse industries. And today we are going to be discussing how they lead in times of change. Now, as leaders, we all know that change is constant. But I think the last 2 years has given it a whole new meaning. Not only was change continuous, but it was ubiquitous in the way we work, how we socially interact, how we take care of ourselves, and also how we adapt to emerging technologies. And so today, what we are going to discuss is how do the leaders stay effective in all this? How do they make an impact? And most importantly, how do they elevate joy? So let's dig in. Let's start with some introductions. Laura, can you say a few words?
Thank you, Shikha. Such a pleasure to be joining this panel today. I'm Laura Berg. I currently have the joy of serving as Vice President of Associate Digital Experience for Walmart Global Tech. My team is chartered with delivering digital experiences that enable our global associates to work better together and be more productive. And over the past year or so, this includes rethinking how we will work together and enable our associates to thrive in the hybrid digitally connected workplace. And more recently, reimagining the campus of the future as we build out Walmart's new 350-acre home office here in Bentonville. On a personal note, my husband, son, and I moved to Northwest Arkansas 3.5 years ago when I joined Walmart. And I love that most of my personal hobbies align with living in the natural state. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Welcome to Lynn. Lynn?
Hello, everyone, and I'm excited to be here. And my name is Lynn Lucas. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at Cohesity, where I've had the privilege of leading the fabulous marketing team here for a little over 4 years. Cohesity is a company that is helping all kinds of businesses get more value from their data, secure, protect, and make it available with our next-gen data management solutions. A little bit about myself. I have always lived in California, originally born in Los Angeles, moved up north when I wanted to get my engineering degree, fell in love with the Bay Area, have never left. 2 children and 1 dog, and don't ask me which one's more important, my husband, and we love being in the outdoors, skiing during the winter and bike riding and taking advantage of the beautiful California hills here in the summer. Thank you.
I second the California part for sure. Welcome. All right, so next we have Tony. Hi, Tony.
Hello, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here. I am Tony Van Winkle. I lead the Digital Workplace Experience organization at Adobe. As you may know, Adobe's mission is to change the world through digital experience. And my mission is to impact the world of digital experience for our employees by helping them innovate, collaborate, and be productive from anywhere, whether that's at home, in the office, or on the go. I'm also the site leader for our headquarters in San Jose. There are executives that we pick for our centers of where employees are. And that is just for me to be an ambassador for our employees, connecting and creating community inside of our organization and connecting that community to organizations outside so that we can do change for good. I have been at Adobe for 12 years. I've been married for 26 years. I have a 21-year-old college student, 3 stepchildren, 2 grandchildren.
Thank you, Tony. I love how you're active both inside and outside Adobe. That's so amazing. Next, we have Leslie. Hi, Leslie.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Hample. I'm the Regional Vice President of Store Operations for Starbucks in Northern California. So what on earth does that mean? It means that I'm in charge of the 700 company-owned stores from Monterey to the Oregon border. And my job is to create leaders who can run good stores. And what I love about being at Starbucks is very similar to Tony. We have a mission to make the world a better place. Our mission and values are to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one cup, one person, one neighborhood at a time. And we take that incredibly seriously. And so in my job, I see my job as making partners, what we call our employees, making their dreams come true and really working hard to make sure that they feel like after they've worked at Starbucks, they feel like they're on a path to a better life. A little bit more about me. I'm single. I live with my dog Snaggle, who is, we'll call him cantankerous. And I adore him. And I've been a Northern California resident for 2 years. And all of that was during COVID. So I am available for recommendations for what I should be doing now that the world is reopening.
Thank you, Leslie. I'll tell you one thing. I get my joy, my cup of joy from Starbucks every time I visit. So you're definitely doing something right. And then we have Renu. Hi, Renu.
Hi, everyone. Wow, great introductions. Every time I hear from this panel, I'm always learning something new. So I'm Renu Upadhyay, very excited to be here and joining this conversation today. I'm part of the end user computing business unit inside of VMware. Our mission really is to secure and enable the future of anywhere work, which is what we're all living and doing right now. And you also heard, Laura, Tony, talk about that as well. So we provide the technology that makes it easy for employees to do their best work wherever they may be. So my role there is I run the marketing engine that helps us, talk about this technology and make it available to our customers everywhere around the world. I'm really blessed to have a super talented team, very diverse ideas, lots of great thoughts and energy. I also have another part of the role is I lead employee engagement for our business unit. So making sure our talent is well nurtured, engaged, and providing all the tools and resources to make sure that they're successful. A little bit on myself personally. I'm originally from Mumbai in India, but now I've officially been here longer in the US and specifically California than I have been in Mumbai. So it's hard to believe. But I have 2 children, and they definitely bring me joy on a daily basis, especially when I see their reaction to when I tell them what I do. Their reactions are always funny. And I have a dog. And if anyone wants to reach out to me, the way to get to know me is through desserts. I'm a huge fan of dessert. So that's the way to my heart.
Thank you, Renu. What an amazing panel. When the opportunity came to take part in WT2, we sort of started brainstorming together about getting leaders to talk about how things have been affecting change, how we are adopting technology, again, because I'm coming from a technology field. But I could not have imagined pulling together this amazing panel from diverse roles and the different kinds of industries. So thank you and for taking the time. Welcome. And I hope the attendees can take away some good points from here. So let's dig in. So to start off, I was thinking about how change really affects us. I think the biggest thing is the level of ambiguity when there is change. There's a lot of fog. You kind of know what you're doing, but then again, you don't. You look to leadership to give direction, to give clarity. And so I thought we'll start by discussing how do the different leaders provide clarity when there is ambiguity, when they perhaps themselves don't see all the bits coming together. So to start us off, Laura, can you share with us your experience at Walmart and otherwise in terms of how you provide that direction to your team, to your folks when there is so much ambiguity?
Sure. So definitely a great question to kind of kick us off and get us framed around this topic. So, we probably can all agree COVID, the pandemic, was probably one of those biggest periods of ambiguity we ever faced. And we didn't have to just look at it from a work impact, right? So as we said, a lot of us in our roles are responsible for associate digital experience. That was my role through some of this as well. But we weren't looking at it just from that work impact, right? We had to consider everything that was going on in our associates' lives because it was so interconnected, right? They were testing positive for COVID. Their children were home from school or daycare. They needed to relocate in order to care for parents. And the majority of our associates as essential workers throughout the entire pandemic, had to show up each day to work amid all of this. And at Walmart, we knew we really had to make sure that all of this was taken into consideration and that we approached the situation with empathy, which is really how I lean in as well. Realizing that everyone was probably dealing with all of this differently. And just as we all experienced, the pandemic just kept throwing new things at us every couple of months, if not weekly or daily. And personally, I feel Walmart and the leadership here did a great job of immediately kind of establishing kind of a response framework that really enabled us to iterate through the ambiguity and evolve together as one company, right? So creating that singular voice and making sure you don't add even more chaos by coming at folks with a whole bunch of different messages. For us, we were able to stand up kind of an emergency operations center, but specific to that was our ability to create cross-functional leads. So again, I was able to bring in that associate experience lens to that and say, how did we bring that forward on a recurring basis to share our priorities of how our organization was being impacted and what our associates needed? And this really helped ensure that we didn't respond in ways that our associates couldn't connect to, right? So we didn't go with a generic message. We made sure it had meaning for everyone. So as we set these mechanisms up, we also needed to make sure, we communicated consistently and constantly with our associates. And I'm not talking here just about frequency, but really how we went about informing how we would continue to work together and interact, as well as what we needed to do to make sure everyone was brought along. So we came with that approach, that how and what to everything we did. And important to this as well was that all those core messages, right, came through from the voice of our senior leadership, from Doug McMillan and Donna Morris, with regularity and transparency. And really that went a long way towards building trust, right, which in turn went a long way in ensuring that there was clarity, even when we couldn't always be so clear.
Laura, I love that. I think building trust, especially in this time, by providing that one voice and also maybe even admitting that, hey, this is how we are going to go in it together, I'm sure would have gone a long way. I'm going to pose a question to Lynn. Lynn, how did things go at Cohesity? How did you provide that clarity, or your team?
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities in what Laura has just shared, but let me highlight a couple of additional things on top of that. So as Chief Marketing Officer, I partnered very closely with our Chief HR Officer to create a lot of the messages and the comms from ourselves as well as other leadership. And I think step one for us was grounding it in vulnerability. I don't know about any of you listening, but I've never managed through a pandemic. So we all needed to express that we were in a time of really heightened stress, anxiety, uncertainty, and we didn't know how exactly it was going to unfold. And that created some very vulnerable moments for, I think, each of the leadership team, which was key, because the second piece, which Laura spoke a lot about and I passionately believe in, is the communication. And there's a lot of aspects to that. But the first area that I would speak to is that it's very difficult to lead through change if those that are hearing the message don't feel that there's a level of authenticity to it. And really, in this past several years, that vulnerability and being open enough to understand that it's okay to express to large groups over Zoom or whatever video conferencing you use, is that I don't know exactly what's going on, and I'm feeling some of those same concerns that you are. So communications, Laura spent a great amount of time on that, and I would double down on that. We innovated in terms of the channels of communications. We were not a big Slack company. That became a highlight for us, as well as video. We also tuned the message. And in terms of an overall process, one of the glass half full positive outcomes was a communications council. So for the first time, the company had cross-departmental and cross-geo representation on key communications, and that's kept up. And then the third area that I would emphasize that really helped all of us, and although our company does not have in that way these essential frontline workers, was establishing a rigor around providing mental health and employee wellness resources, and really making that part of both the dialogue, but also the corporate offering in a way that it really hadn't been before. And so those are practices that continue today. And on that last one, I would say we invested even more in the leadership, because of the stress and the strain that they may be taking on in trying to lead their own families, teach their children at home, care for their parents, and lead large global organizations. So those are a few of my tips from this past time.
Wow, thanks, Lynn. I think, yes, being authentic, showing vulnerability, like you said, in a large group over Zoom, that was new even for me. To be able to communicate, and then also to sometimes to receive that communication. But I think it just brought us a lot closer. We all felt one together. And speaking of Zoom, Tony, I was wondering if you can share, what are some of the best ways to participate in hybrid work, in that hybrid work environment? And actually, this was one of the questions we received in the VOVA platform through our attendees. So Tony, if you can add some color to that.
Mm-hmm. I know, Renew, you might have wanted to talk to that a little bit as well, but one of the things that we're faced with this new level of work is that we've all kind of been for the last 2 years in this democratized environment where we all have our 2x3 inch boxes. And regardless of where you sit in the organization, whether you're the CEO or the janitor or someone doing maintenance, you have communicated on what I would say is a somewhat equal playing field. And your voices can be heard through muting and unmuting. Sometimes we talk over each other a little bit now, and so on and so forth. As we go into hybrid, this environment is really about how do we equalize this conversation again? Because right now, what the technology somewhat looks like is that some of us will be in our 2x3 inch boxes, and some of us will be at a very long conference room table without our identity on the box, without really understanding, you get that side profile, you can't see me face to face. And so these are the type of technological hurdles that we have to overcome. It's going to be almost the same type of transition. And in some ways, I think it's going to be more challenging because we're going to have a lot of disruption to get conference rooms to work in the same way where we can all engage in a very level playing field. There's probably also within your organization a number of policy changes related to what is a remote worker, what is a hybrid worker, what if you were remote before, did it really change my world, and so on and so forth. So this human element of managing through this change is probably the thing that has to happen at the personal level, at the team level, and at the broader company level. I think this will change the way that we team together. Some of you may have those 3x2 work days where you come in 3 days a week and you're out in your home 2 days a week. How are you going to arrange that collaboration? How are you going to innovate? I'm in a software company. How do we design our future products in hybrid? So these are all questions that we're asking ourselves. Renu, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, all great points. I would just add one thing, saying that you have to be very intentional, right? If it's a hybrid work environment, you have to go in knowing that. It's very easy once you're back in the room to slip into that old habit of starting to talk to the person sitting next to you and forget people are on Zoom. And as you mentioned, the rooms are still not designed necessarily, to support that. So knowing you're entering the meeting in a hybrid setup and planning for that upfront is something we've had to learn, where, in marketing, you talk about sometimes, you're marketing to enterprises, and in the consumer world, you're marketing to a customer of one, where it's literally everybody is unique and an individual, and some choose to come in, some may not choose to come in. And so when you plan your meetings intentionally, how do you make sure you are aware that there are people on the Zoom? How do you make sure they participate? How do you leverage the different sort of features of, and not just Zoom, whatever platform you choose to use? How do you leverage the features to make sure they feel included? But being very intentional about that and building that as part of the conversation is super important. I'll just add one more thing is, a lot of people talk about missing the water cooler conversation. One of the things that has happened when you're virtual is you schedule a meeting, which means therefore you have a subject and an agenda. And so if you don't have that, you feel, can I just pick up the phone and talk to Shikha? Unless I have an agenda, would I do that? But I've been encouraging the team a lot. I'm like, you would do that while walking over to refill your coffee. If you saw your colleague there, you would stop for 5 minutes and discuss and probably have a super productive conversation. So it's okay to schedule time. And I, in fact, encourage them to schedule one-on-ones that can be a little organic. Don't always, you can have some agenda items, but also to not lose that personal connection, to ask how each of you are doing. In lieu of that water cooler, and in lieu of walking together to grab a lunch or things like that. So there's many things, as you mentioned, Tony, it's definitely a new world of working, a new way of working. So, these are just a couple of things I would add.
Sounds good. All right, so let's go to another question in terms of, when we are having this kind of a remote or hybrid work environment, how do leaders rally together a team for a shared purpose? Let me ask Leslie, can you share what's happening at Starbucks and how you go about that?
Absolutely. I think the only thing that's constant is change in this world. I don't know if all of you heard, we got a new CEO last week. So there is always change. And I think what I have found to be the most effective of rallying the team is really helping to connect that change to a higher, bigger purpose. So at Starbucks, we talk a lot about how we help our baristas on a path to a better life, so that they look back at their experience inside our stores and say, Starbucks helped me get there. And so with the introduction of a new leader, rather than seeing it as, oh gosh, it's a 180-degree change, we've got to do it all over again, it's more, how do we use the change in leadership to build momentum towards what we're already working for? Or perhaps less selfishly, as we think about back during the pandemic, our Starbucks stores were sometimes, particularly for single people like me, the only human interaction people got each and every day. And so how do we help see that, yeah, it's really hard right now to be a frontline worker coming to work, but it's important that I do it because maybe this is the only time a person sees another human, or maybe this store is in a food desert and it's the only affordable meal option, or maybe we need to keep our stores open so that we can keep our partners working. And so really tying the hard to a bigger idea, I have found really helps to rally the team in the pursuit of that big hard work.
Wow, yeah, that's a shared purpose I can get behind as well. Wow, that's amazing. Tony, what about in the tech world? At Adobe, how did you go about rallying the teams?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I use a metaphor around superpowers, and what I mean by that is that we all have a specific superpower that we bring to the table, and once we kind of come to an understanding of what our individual unique superpowers are, we can form what I would call a Justice League for technology. And you all that watch superhero movies know exactly what I'm talking about, that the sum is way greater than the parts. And so this story for me is a metaphor for diversity, inclusion, belonging, and setting yourself up for a connection around kind of a growth mindset, and putting the team together so that you can start to innovate. And that's what we are going to need to do. This re-entry into the new environment that we're walking into is going to be probably another multi-year journey. Laura's campus is not going to come up tomorrow and be absolutely perfect. The same thing with all of our panelists today. We're going to go on a learning journey together. And understanding what your colleagues are really good at opens a door for us to bring those thoughts together so that we can innovate for the future. I will tell you that my team is more motivated now about going forward because they climbed a hill together and they went to battle together. And now they're just like, we so did that COVID thing. Let's like, what's the next challenge? And while it's super scary and we're all kind of looking at each other going, we don't have all the answers, but we do know that we have some superpowers that we can lean on in order to get us through that change.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, if we can do that in the last 2 years, then, sky is the limit. What about you, Renu? What are some of the tools and tricks you're using to rally the teams?
Yeah, and I'll just say I loved, what Tony and Leslie talked about, the shared purpose. So I won't delve into that. I'll talk more about the tools instead. The shared purpose is important because when there's change, shared purpose gives a sense of stability. When you feel like the ground is shifting underneath you, the shared purpose gives a little bit of that anchor. And it's very important to have that because you need that hope or that faith, right, that things are going to work out. Some of the things, I'll just talk sort of tools. We talked earlier about communication, very important. I think many of us, it's interesting, again, for myself, being in marketing, comms is what I do. I communicate, and how do you communicate internally and treat your employees as your customers in some ways? So the clarity of the message, the repetition of the message, making sure the message sticks, not assuming that it's well understood, especially when it's remote. So the communication part is extremely, extremely important, and trying to reach people where they're at and in whatever manner that they need. So for myself personally, a lot of skip levels, a lot of conversation. I also hosted sort of just this, we used to do this monthly, just to regroup and reconnect, no agenda. But in the first year of the pandemic, it's funny, it was almost like a therapy session for me. Lynn talked about being vulnerable because we were suddenly pivoting to virtual things with no idea how they were going to turn out at the other end. So in-person customer advisory boards went to online advisory boards, and there was a learning through every single thing we did. And that became a meeting where I could be open about what worked, what didn't work, what we learned and struggled through. And then that me sharing my mistakes made it okay for people to feel it's okay to make mistakes. And we're all learning through it together, right? And so to the point that if we went through that together, that hill we climbed, then of course there's a lot more we could do. So I think communication. And then the second thing I would say is sort of, again, in times of change and when you have a shared purpose, it's good to have some predictable process, like something that you can build around. And two, I would share specifically. One is sort of, VMware's adopting OKRs, objectives and key results. So really grounding, right, that writing down that shared purpose and grounding that is important because again, it gives something tangible to hold on to. And then, we started instituting a lot of quarterly business reviews, but really mindful, it's really a review, right? To assess what worked, what didn't work, what are the risks we took, what are the challenges we face, and how did we come out at the other end and drive impact? Because again, you don't want to penalize someone for trying something new and going through this period of change. And different people on the team had different challenges, so accommodating for that, as you had those reviews was very important. For me, the ultimate joy, frankly, we're talking about joy here too, is the team, how they came together. And I totally resonate with you, Tony, on that. I mean, it was incredible. We were shifting boundaries. They were stepping in, they were stretching, they were pushing themselves and, having the hard conversations that, could have easily been avoided if none of this happened. So I think it was tremendous just to see the growth in the team. So great experience.
Thanks, Renu. And, if I can chime in there, as a product developer, taking care of the roadmap, it has been a challenge in terms of how do you communicate all the change. And so what we've leaned into, what I have specifically done is just the over communication, like how many of you have reiterated. I think that has served well. And then Renu, like you said, writing things down. So not that we didn't write things down before, but with the constant change, how is the product evolving? How is the roadmap evolving? So that has actually served us well and something which we'll carry on forward as well. The repeated communication in terms of how that is evolving, and then sharing the success and failure of that product at the customer side. I think that has really bonded us together as well to see how was the product used, this really worked out successfully or not. So just doing that at a more frequent pace, more detailed pace, not so formal, but a lot more frequent, I think has just brought us all together. All right, so speaking of joy, I did want to also shift gears a little bit and hear from all of you in terms of how you are navigating your career and how are you finding meaning and joy in your careers. So Leslie, why don't you kick us off? How have you navigated your own personal growth and found joy?
Absolutely. I think the best advice that I wish I could go back 10 years and give myself is to keep decentering myself when I'm feeling things are hard and when I've lost the joy. Because I think, like a lot of women in business, I'm really good at fighting for other people and less good at fighting for myself. And I find, particularly as I get more senior, the idea of the impact I can have for my team, for my customers, for my communities, when I focus on that, the joy is very easy to find. When I'm focused on my own achievement or the next title or the next job, I get really caught up in all the office politics. So for me, whenever I feel myself getting grumpy, it's about decentering and remembering the bigger mission of what I'm trying to accomplish in the world. And the joy is very easy to find after that.
Wow, that's an easy one to keep track of and keep remembering. What about you, Lynn?
Yeah, I love this question. I remember too many years ago, and I won't say how many years ago, young in my career, asking a manager that I really respected how he had plotted his career, and he just laughed and said he hadn't, and the career had found him. So I think that that doesn't say that you shouldn't strive for goals and change things up, but I think in some ways we need to be open to what the world and life may bring us to find our career, and you never know what new meeting or new opportunity might turn up through happenstance. What brings me joy right now is elevating other people in their career, in particular women in STEM, because that's a field that desperately needs the viewpoints and the diversities of more women as well as other diverse folks. And I'll say that I recently had the bittersweet moment of seeing a young woman here who'd been at Cohesity for 6 years announce that she would be moving to her next career. But I was so pleased to have played some part in it, in her growth here at this time, and to become an outspoken Latinx woman here on the Diversity Council and just raise her voice. And that gives me great joy.
Thank you, Lynn. Laura, can you share your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's going to sound a little bit repetitive, right? But that's really great to reinforce my own thinking, right? As always, I've believed, you need to really think about your career as a journey, right? And not really and realize that that journey is unique to you. So, don't get caught up in comparing yourself or asking bosses, like, how did you get where you got? Your trajectory is your own. So as I approach each role, I kind of take maybe three lenses, right? Do I see what I'm doing as something where I can apply past successes to some new challenge, right? Or can I find new skills, right? Either from the role, from my leadership, or from my team. Can I learn something from this? And third, am I able to maintain personal balance? And it kind of goes to what Leslie said in decentering, so if I can answer positively to these questions, then I'm in a good place, right? And if not, it's probably time to rethink, right? What's that next step? And so really, that really has pivoted me through, 15 different roles across 5 different companies over 32 years, so, and I've always found happiness, right? Because I can answer yes. And the minute one of those 3 isn't right, then realize how you need to step up and do that. And again, I'm kind of in the enlightened phase of my career. So for me, I said, it's less about churning, right? The career crank, and more about challenging. So challenging my team. So similarly, absolutely get joy out of one-on-one time with my team. And when I can help them see new things or come up with new ideas, that just thrills me beyond all belief.
Laura, that's amazing. You should pin those 3 questions down right now. And we'll all be asking ourselves those. That's amazing.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Tony, what about you?
Yeah, so ditto. What beautiful thoughts and advice from everyone. Really for me, because I am at this stage in my career where I'm thinking about what happens after this operator role that I have. What does that look like? So at work, it's really about, hey, I'm having fun with innovation and solving really juicy problems and watching people grow and creating pathways for the next generation of leaders. At home, I'm having fun with my family. I have my dog here as well, Renew, and she's snoring right next to me, and trying to find peace and, put my toes in the sand at the beach and keep that in balance. And then the real piece that I'm leaning into right now is my community. I serve on 3 nonprofit boards, and that sounds like a lot when you have a big job like mine, but they're all interrelated. So the first is the American Leadership Forum, and we have a fellows program where leaders are able to use the tools they have to work with cross-functional, cross-sectional leaders to create change in the community. The second is Silicon Valley Creates. And what we do is through partnerships, education, and publications like Content Magazine, is we create impact around the arts, education, and innovation in Silicon Valley. And then the last is Silicon Valley Leadership Group, which is all about economic development and encouraging entrepreneurship. That is really the heart and soul of Silicon Valley. So I'm thinking about the impact that I'm making today, hopefully transitioning that to new leaders, and then going into my next role, which will be a leader in my community.
Wow, Very inspiring, Tony. And Renu, to wrap things up, what about you?
Great. I have my three as well, and they're very aligned to what a lot of them shared. So for me, the first is really the people I work with really energizes me. For those of you who may not know me yet, I'm quite an extrovert, so I do get my energy from people. Sense of humor is a big plus, and I like to build long, enduring relationships. So I tell folks I'm Facebook friends with my very first boss many years ago, and and those are the kinds of relationships I like to build. So people energize me, so I look for that. The impact of the work that I have, and when I say work, it's not just did I do a great marketing launch, but it's people, someone's career, as Lynn mentioned for herself. It could be anything. Do I feel like I made an impact? Did I make a difference? And finally, I'm really energized by intellectual stimulation. So, that opportunity for growth, whether it's helping someone through a challenging situation, a new technology I have to understand, I have to break down a complex problem and sort of see how I might want to address that. So I look at those things, and if someone asks me how did I navigate my career, I also did not have a plan. I'm not one of those, but yeah, happy to share anything else folks may want to reach out offline. So thank you for asking the question.
Thank you, Renu, and thank you to all our amazing panelists. I feel like we can go on for another hour or so. There is so much here to talk about. But for all the attendees, please do feel free to reach out through the WOWA portal. We can do a follow-up Q&A via chat as well in the portal itself. But thank you once again to the panelists and also to WT2 for giving us the opportunity to come and present our thoughts here. Back to you, Kavita.
You are on mute, Kavita.
Thank you, Shika, and the amazing panelists for such great nuggets here in terms of really engaging the team, elevating joy, and leading in times of change. Again, as Shika mentioned, you can ask questions in offline as well as in WOWA. With that, I want to transfer the session to Marjorie Abdul Karim.